Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, "A whole car wash manager forces me to pay more for unlimited wash pass." A few years ago I had to regularly have my vehicle cleaned when I drove to the client's location. I went to a local hand car wash company and bought one of those, unlimited, visit 6-month pass. The pass that I purchased required my vehicle to be present, license plate entered into their records and a photo taken to verify the car was the same as when I bought the pass. A few months go by and I filed my contract away but kept my pass with me at all times. I was using it on the average about 2 times per week. It was a lot, but my visits were mid-morning during the slow times and required nothing special but Armor All on the tires. I was on my 3rd visit one week and won a hole manager who for some reason decided I was on his crap list. He had seen me there numerous times but started harassing me on the frequency of my visits, that I was taking advantage of the system. What the duck? It was unlimited in bold caps on the pass and on the advertising on the outside banner. During my wait, he pulled up my contract because he had nothing better to do and studied it carefully. Sure enough, he comes out to tell me that my unlimited pass was sold under the normal-sized vehicle price, not the large vehicle size because I had a sport SUV, think RAV4. He tells me that I have to pay $4 extra each visit now. Never mind, the apparent cost difference was $35 total for the unlimited 6-month large vehicle contract. I'm of course upset because I know he's just being a dick for no other reason than he dislikes me. I look at the contract and sure enough, the normal vehicle size is checked even though the attached printed picture of my vehicle is my sport SUV. The a-hole just wants to bring in more money to the tills, which is why he's doing this. I'm fuming but remain calm for the most part. I know this ducked up, not fair and a complete racket on his part. But I can't argue it because I know now that my price was indeed for the wrong-sized vehicle. He has the authority to cancel the contract, which is not what I want. So after some negotiations back and forth, the a-hole finally agrees to allow me to purchase the $35 upgrade for the remaining 3.5 months I have left on my contract. Mind you, the pro-rated rate should have been $20, but he said it was for past charges, even though his company made the mistake. I know he just wanted to make a contract sale to show he was doing something. He whips out the contract paperwork. I check over all the details to make sure everything was legit. Vehicle size. Large, check. License plate hash, check. Photo attached, check. New large vehicle pass with same EXP date, check. Contract expiration date, 6 months from that very date I was paying the $35. Oh crap. The dude just left the default auto date in place. I signed the contract, pay the $35 bucks, stapled the receipt to the contract and left. The very next visit I see the other manager on duty. I immediately pull out my new receipt with the 6-month date not matching my pass's expiration date. I don't know what's going on, but my contract says this date. Can you please correct my pass, please? He happily does without a single question at all. I got another 3 months for $35 and everything is legit. The a-hole manager never bothers to check my new pass's expiration date because he thinks it's the one he gave me. I used that bad boy for the entire 6 months. Next one is titled, "Have fun paying for those scratches." Okay, so let me take you down memory lane a bit. About 2 years ago I'm working in a soul-crushing convenience store in a small-ish town that is the biggest attractant to douchebags in the area. It was a good day if I was only yelled at once by a customer. Anywho, this day was like most others. About 30 minutes left in my shift, this dude comes in saying the car wash is broken. That's not surprising considering it's super touchy on where you park before it runs, and it only gives you exactly 5 minutes to find that spot. It's not like it's painted with a huge arrow and a voice over an intercom telling you to pull forward, stop. Oh wait, it actually does exactly that. This guy was from out of town and was driving a super nice Escalade. Probably costs more than what we had in inventory, honestly. So after he finishes yelling at me about, "Your ducking piece of crap machine is goddamn retarded. It won't ducking work blah blah blah. I'm a douche." Might have added a bit at the end there, the rest is a word-for-word quote. So I go grab the new code to give him a free wash and go out to see what's up with the machine. When we get out there he sets in on me again about how no one came to hand soap his car. Well, he didn't like it when I asked him to look at the sign in huge letters that says, "Please use our soap buckets at your convenience." So he starts in on me personally, fat ducking people in this country probably can't get a girl to save his ducking life. When I start to tell him off he cuts me off and tells me, "Don't say another ducking word to me. Just do your job and punch those codes in like a good boy." Okay, whatever. I don't get paid enough to put up with this, so I tell him, "Actually sir, I'm not allowed to punch the numbers in, you have to do it." As you can probably imagine he sets in again with tons of very colorful language but finally gets out of the car and punches the numbers in. This is where it gets good. He tells me to duck off and don't talk anymore. I wasn't even saying anything because I was having a hard time not punching him. So he starts to ease in, and I could tell that he was going to catch his back bumper on the safety pole that is in front of the code machine. He hit it going a pretty good speed and it scratched from his back driver door, all the way to the end of the bumper. He gets out and just lets the cuss words flow. Then he turned to me and asked, "Why didn't you stop me before I hit that pole?" So without missing a beat I said, "Sir, you told me not to talk, but you might want to hurry. I'm only allowed to give one code and the time is about to expire in there. Also, just so you know, if you come back into the store after your wash is done, the cops will be called for the way you treated me today." He tried saying some other things but I just went back inside the store and told my coworker that I was going to smoke and if the dude shows up to call the cops. Next one is titled, "Worst Kind of Malicious Compliance." This is my only story of malicious compliance. I didn't perform it, but the home my dad was in did. My dad had a dementia which left him essentially a vegetable. But before he was bedridden, they would put him in his wheelchair and bring him to the dining area, outside to get some fresh air, etc. He actually enjoyed this little trips. He could hardly talk at this point, and knew who we were, but couldn't really do anything. Seeing him smile in the fresh air was great. Anyway, that is not the point of this story. Anyway, sometimes he would lean forward and almost fall out of his chair. We told the nurses and staff that he needed to be seat belted in, so that he wouldn't fall. They said no because Ontario guidelines, at the time, were that a patient could not be strapped into anything unless they fall out and injure themselves. Their reasoning was that families had sued previously for cruelty to patients by strapping them in. We said that was ridiculous and he needs to be seat belted in. They once again said no. We went to the top of the home. Same thing. Anyway, we come in one day and he is strapped in. Has a broken nose, cheekbone and stitches over his eye. He fell out of his chair and the staff of the home just bluntly said that now he can be strapped in. We gave the home hell and they said they were just following guidelines. Worst part was my dad was in a lot of pain and didn't really understand why. Didn't know why his face hurt, why he couldn't breathe the same. It was heartbreaking to see him like a child because the home wouldn't do the right thing from the beginning, sitting compliance of a stupid rule. This place followed the guidelines to the point of zealotry at the cost of actual compassionate care. Yet because they followed the rules too closely, they were never at fault. That place still is running today. Next one is titled, "Yeah, I'll put the Reshops up." For starters, I work in retail. Yikes already. So one of the assistant managers was being the witch she normally is, but I was having a duck all type of day. I said something about my feet hurting and she tries to rip into me about how she's so much older, 45-years pod, than me, 19, and she never complains. I snap back about how I have ducked up knees and crap from tearing my ligaments when I was like 10, foot got stuck in swing stopping mat in elementary school. So, my legs and feet hurt generally as is. She just rolls her eyes and tells me to put the Reshops up. Items people brought to the register but decided they didn't want any more. So I just nod. So I take the Reshops and put them all on the sky shelves in random places. I get back and clock out and she looks at me, "Wow, that was fast." Yup. Just had to put them all up. No biggie. To this day, Everyone thinks some ducked-up customer just puts random crap on the sky shelves when they don't want anything since they keep finding random crap everywhere. Next one is titled, "That's Not My Job." This was not me, but a friend of mine. My friend, let's call him Chad, is a very hard worker but also one to not do anything outside his job description because, as he would put it, agree once and suddenly you have new duties that you are not getting paid for. So I worked with Chad at an armored transport company. I was on the road and he worked in the cash vault. He was hired initially as just a vault employee, meaning that he really had no job other than to do what was asked of him by the supervisor. One day the route debriefer quit and they put Chad in that position full-time. The job of the debriefer was to take a route's PDA and driver log, compare the time spent at the stop and then reference the client's contract to ensure proper billing. The company I worked for had 30 routes with thousands of stops that came and went depending on the day, so this was a job that kept him pretty busy sitting at his desk in the vault. One day both the dispatcher and one of the floating helpers had called in and Chad kept getting asked to help check in routes and answer the dispatch phone, which he did. However, this caused him to not finish his debrief for the day, which honestly is not a huge deal because they bill the clients monthly and this was sometime in the middle of a month, so he had time to catch up. The next day he comes in and the vault manager told him that the branch and operations managers wanted to have a word with him. So he goes upstairs and sits through a 15-minute long witch fest about how none of that other stuff is his job and it's important to get the debrief done, otherwise we lose money and blah blah blah. Chad sits through it all nodding and agreeing and at the end had to sign a write-up that entailed all of that. Fast forward about another month and same thing happened, only worse. It's literally only Chad and the vault manager that showed up, so they were down 2 route checkers, the coin person, the dispatcher, and the helper. Chad comes in to work in the middle of the pandemonium and sits down at his desk and starts to work. The phones are ringing. The route guys are having a meltdown because they are so far behind. No one can find the right coin. Craziness. The vault manager tells Chad to help and his debrief can wait, and Chad calmly says, "That's not my job." They go back and forth for a few minutes with the vault manager getting ever more agitated and Chad sitting calmly typing away on his computer. Eventually the vault manager had enough of it and stormed over to his phone and called the operations and branch manager to come down. After a few minutes they both come down and tell Chad that he needs to get off his butt and help. He pulls out a computer print out of his job description, and says, "Show me on here where it says that I have to do any of this crap because you could not get anyone to come in." Then before they could answer he pulls out his copy of the write-up and puts that on the desk and says, "This is what I got the last time I helped out. Why don't you help and leave me to my job?" They both relented and stayed down in the trenches to help the vault until the second shift showed up. The next day they called him up and removed the write-up from his file and told him to just use his best judgment when it came to helping out. But from that day on he did nothing but his debriefs, until they finally moved him out to the route for not being a team player, which on the route you are your own boss and you get paid $4 more an hour, so it was a win for him. Next one is titled, "Got asked to step down from a position." Years ago, I taught Sunday school on a voluntary basis at a mega church in my town. There were so many children in this church that classrooms were made available to group children with Sunday school teachers for every year of their life until middle school and high school. At which point they attended a larger group with similarly aged peers in separate wings of the building. I taught 2-year-olds and loved every moment of it. My classroom boasted a huge number of children, at about 20 to 25 per service. I was supposed to have an adult co-teacher, but all the other adult volunteers were sent to other classrooms with a higher need. I had 2 high school-aged volunteers, best friends, who often spent service time playing together, despite repeated approaches to asking them to play with the children. One of my volunteers was the director's son, who I couldn't replace because of his mother, and who clearly did not want to be volunteering. Despite this, and despite inheriting a huge classroom full of several special needs children, my children played calmly throughout service, and enjoyed a routine and simple rules I set to run the classroom efficiently. Children arrived, played calmly, sang songs, ate snack, and went home. Even in the face of this obvious evidence that my classroom was running efficiently, I was repeatedly asked by church leaders to adopt certain mannerisms around children I found inauthentic and frankly patronizing. I don't and won't speak in a high-pitched voice to anyone, child or adult. I don't and won't use words like, upsy-daisy. These requests were persistent. It was the opinion of the church that I was not warm and welcoming enough. It was modeled again and again that the church would prefer I was over-animated in a huge smile hug. "I'm so glad you're here" kind of greeting. One summer day we were all called, some 50-plus room leaders and volunteers, into a mandatory meeting. You know those meetings where you instantly know they're talking about you? The policies on words like, upsy-daisy, were now set in writing, and I was shortly asked to step down for not using these phrases. I was not allowed to prepare my children for the transition to a new Sunday teacher. I was immediately replaced, by a friend, actually, and was fairly crushed about the sudden break from little people I liked spending time with. And furthermore, it made me question my abilities to work with children, an endeavor I had already devoted my life to. Unbeknownst to my church, I had long been working at a career in early childhood intervention, teaching a classroom full of 2-year-old child victims of trauma and abuse with a heavy caseload of special needs children. My coworker called me over one Monday, as I was the 2's teacher, asking what I made of this email she had just received concerning a church with an out-of-control 2's room requesting that someone come consult with their new staff and help implement some new classroom techniques to manage difficult behaviors. Naturally, I agreed to do the consult in person as soon as possible, and asked my coworker to let them know I would meet with them on a completely voluntary basis at their next Sunday service. It was absolutely my pleasure to greet my church leaders and friend as their specialist consultant, to their confused surprise. I walked them through all sorts of interventions and strategies I had previously used to create a calm classroom environment and strongly advised against the use of overly excited greetings and phrases like, upsy-daisy, in place of direct redirective requests, e.g., please put your feet back on the floor. It was my strong written recommendation that the written policies on these strategies be amended and for staff to be immediately retrained in accordance with actual therapeutic practices. It was my last time stepping foot in that church, and will forever remain my most deliciously cherished memories of vindication. Next one is titled, I didn't want them to end up in the yard. This happened years ago. I had this roommate that wasn't all that great to live with. Since then, he ended up being a pretty good guy. But back then, wow. I got tired of being there and I had some friends that were moving into a house and they asked if I wanted the 3rd bedroom. Hell yes I do. I knew it would take me a few weeks to get a lot of my stuff out of the old place and I let my roommate know it wasn't going to happen fast. It would be done by the end of the month. I had paid my share for the current month and he had someone else lined up to move in. Most of the kitchenware, plates, cups, pots and pans, etc. was mine. The washer and dryer was mine as well. My plan was to let them use these things as long as possible while I get my personal stuff out. About a week later, again, told him it would take longer than a week, which he was cool with. I got a voicemail from him. If you don't get your crap out of here as soon as possible, I'm going to throw it in the yard. Cool. While my old roommate was at work the next day, I got my new roommate to bring his truck over. I loaded up the dresser and other belongings and took them to my new place. Then we came back and I got all my kitchen stuff loaded up. Then my favorite part, my old roommate still had clothes in the washer that were wet and clothes in the dryer. I grabbed those out and threw them on his bed. We loaded up the washer and dryer and headed to the new house. I got a call later that day when my old roommate got back to his house. He asked why I took the washer and dryer and I told him, well, I didn't want you to put those out in the yard. I told him I was following his instructions exactly and would be more than happy to let him hear his voicemail. He hung up and was pretty upset for some time because he didn't have a way to wash his clothes anymore. That has always been one of my favorite malicious compliance stories. Last one is titled, Hope you enjoyed a miserable half hour, Amy. After what had been to me a disappointing tenure with some truly terrible people, I was recently told I would be let go at the end of the month by my boss, who is a witch, and the office manager Amy, who is not someone I particularly like and who I feel constantly disrespects me. I was asked to finalize some binders of tax information going to the IRS, which involved hole punching about 500 sheets of paper. There is an electric hole punch right outside Amy's office that makes a loud and annoying grinding noise. It can technically take 50 pages at a time, but I just had to make sure all the pages were punched correctly. So I did it in batches of 15 to 25 pages, making sure to tap them all together on the counter 5 to 6 times before punching and then after to go into the binder. The hole punch has a trench that sometimes gets clogged with the little punch dots. So in the spirit of making sure all the pages were punched neatly, I made sure to clean out the trench with some metal scissors that happened to drag and clank delightfully against the metal parts inside the trench every few batches. Someone walked into her office to talk to her and I let them have their privacy, only coming back when I was sure they'd finished and I wouldn't disturb their meeting with my vital task. I also made sure happened to drop some binder clips and then put them all back in the tub where they live. They're all metal so they're kind of noisy, oh well. This is a small and petty tale, but it made me feel better to make half an hour of her life decidedly less pleasant. Thanks for listening.